a big plate of pasta. It's gonna be so good.
I'm not gonna eat this whole thing, just so anybody knows.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
No, no.
I think you are.
No.
I think you are.
I'm saving it.
Hi, I'm Greg. Welcome to The Pot Thickens, where I share my love of food and cooking and the cultures behind it. I'm going to prepare a homemade fresh pasta for you today called Tagliatelle that will be served with a delicious and rich ragu made from mushrooms and tomatoes. Before I get started, please do me a huge favor and click on that thumbs up button so that YouTube knows that I'm doing something worthwhile here. Thank you so much for helping me to grow this channel. Today we're taking a trip to the northern Italian region of Emilia-Romagna. This is where Tagliatelle was born. The name comes from an Italian word called tagliare, which literally means to cut. Tagliatelle is a sheet pasta which is hand cut into ribbons that are slightly wider than a fettuccine and a little bit narrower than a pappardelle, so it's something in between. This pasta is traditionally served with a meat-based bolognese sauce, which is obviously, of course, from the city of Bologna in Emilia-Romagna. The shape and the width of the pasta is just perfect for the thick and hearty, rich, tomatoey meat sauces that are found in Bologna. To make this plant-based, I'll be using a mushroom-based sauce instead of meat, but along the way I'll show you some tips on how you can beef up that rich umami flavor. Yes, that pun was completely intended. Okay, let's start with the pasta. Tagliatelle is in the family of fresh sheet pastas that is in the same family as fettuccine, pappardelle, also lasagna sheets. They are usually made with flour and eggs, but today I'm going to leave out the eggs and make it just with flour, salt, water, and just a little bit of oil. I know all the Italians out there are clicking on that thumbs down button and clicking away from this video. I can hear you all saying, "No, you can't make the tagliatelle without the eggs." Wait, that sounds a little bit Swedish, not Italian. Actually, this is one of the greatest challenges of plant-based Italian cooking. That is, how do you replace the eggs in pasta and get that same chewy structure and texture of the pasta that you get with an egg-based pasta? Well, I don't know that there's anything that can truly replace an egg-based pasta without eggs. However, I think we can come pretty close and have something that's equally as satisfying. In order to do that, we really need to think about what is it the eggs are doing in the pasta. An egg really is mostly water, but it also has two main components to it that add to the pasta. That is the fats that are found mostly in the yolks, and of course proteins. The fats provide a richness to the pasta that you can get by adding other kinds of fats, and so that's why I'm going to be adding a little bit of olive oil. The protein in eggs is a little bit more difficult. I think you have to be really careful about making just a water-based pasta because what happens is it can easily overcook and become really soggy. To make up for this, you want to find a flour which has the highest protein content possible. Today I'm using bread flour, which has higher protein than your typical all-purpose flour. Finally, when you go to cook your pasta, it's really important to cook it only al dente. You actually want it slightly undercooked, otherwise it can easily go over when you mix it with the sauce in that pan. It'll continue to cook after you take it out of that boiling water, so you don't want it to end up a soggy mess. Nothing is worse than a gloopy, soppy, soggy pasta that's been overcooked. I'm starting with about 400 grams of a high protein bread flour, and I'm putting that right on my countertop along with a sprinkling of salt. I guess about a half a teaspoon just to make sure that it has a little bit of flavor in it. You want to make a well in the center and add about 1/3 of the water to that well you've created. This is the point where I'll add about 1 teaspoon of olive oil. Not too much, but enough to give a little bit more richness to that dough. Start slowly incorporating the flour into the center with your hands. As the water gets absorbed, add a little bit more at a time until the flour becomes all hydrated. You want to go slowly and start to knead it together. It looks like a mess, but in a few minutes it'll all come together into a dough, and that dough will be able to pick up all that stray flour and the pieces of the dough that's on the counter. It'll all come together, I promise. Just have a little bit of patience. You're looking for the texture of the dough to be rather stiff and not sticky and wet. You don't want it too soft because this is a pasta and you want to be able to have a good structure to be able to roll it out and maintain its firmness. Continue kneading this dough for a good 10 minutes on the counter until it'll become smooth and elastic. At this point, the gluten strands are very, very tight in the dough, and it would be really hard to roll out. You just wouldn't be able to stretch that dough out at all. So it really needs to rest. So cover this, rest it for Well, a minimum of 10 minutes, but I usually like to let this dough rest about an hour. You can make this earlier in the day and cover it and let it wait until you're ready to roll it out. That's perfectly fine. But it does need to have a rest to let those gluten, protein, fibers relax. After it is rested, you can see now that this dough is nice and soft and it has relaxed and it's easy to spread out and push out. It's so much easier to roll out and stretch now. It should be a little bit dry to the touch and not sticky at all. Roll out your pasta. Lightly flouring the dough in the board is needed to keep it from sticking to the board or to the rolling pin. You want to keep turning the dough and rolling outwards to stretch the dough into a sheet. Eventually that'll get there, and you want about a 2 millimeter thickness in your sheet. You don't want this pasta to be too thin, but you want it thin enough so that it doesn't become gummy when you cook it. Take your time here, don't be in a hurry. As you stretch the dough more, the gluten will fight you, so you want to do this slowly and coax it along on that journey. Just keep turning the dough, rolling, and eventually it'll get there. Use gentle strokes on that so that you're not pushing too hard on the dough. I think rolling out dough is one of the most relaxing and enjoyable parts of making pasta, besides eating it, of course. I like to take this time to reflect on all the good things in life, and as I'm rolling out this pasta and taking my time doing that, I'm putting all the love I have right into that dough for people to enjoy when they eat the pasta. Once you have your dough rolled out to the thickness you want to liberally flour it so it doesn't stick, and then just fold it up and cut it into regularly sized ribbons. Once you have that cut, unfold those pastas and sprinkle it with a little bit more flour and fluff it up to coat it well so it doesn't stick together. Then you can set this aside until you're ready to cook it. Okay, let's talk bolognese. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, the traditional bolognese ragu is based on meat. It is slow cooked for several hours to develop a rich, thick sauce, and I want to create that same satisfying rich umami in my mushroom-based sauce. So I'll be using many of the same traditional techniques for a traditional meat ragu. Of course, we're going to start by preparing the ingredients. First, I'm going to finely dice up our sofrito, which is made up of celery, carrots, and onions. And I'm going to prepare about a cup of each. You can do less or more depending on your taste, but this is about a cup. And I'm making a little more sauce than what I'm going to need for this dish, so I'll have some extra. Today I'm using regular button mushrooms because that's what I have on hand, but you can use any kind of mushrooms or mix of mushrooms you like. As a matter of fact, fresh porcini mushrooms would be absolutely terrific in this dish if you can find them. These are also going to be finely diced, enough to make about 2 cups or 2.5 cups, and I'm estimating because I didn't really measure it. I'm also gently smashing 4 cloves of garlic, and we need to talk about garlic. I think there's a misperception in America that Italian cooking is loaded with garlic. I think while Italians do use garlic in a lot of their dishes, they actually use it with a very light hand because they don't want the balance of the dish to be overpowered by pungency of garlic, and that's really important. Italian cooking is simple flavors, clean flavors. You want the flavor of the tomato, the flavor of the vegetables, the flavor of, if they're using meat, in my case mushrooms, you want the flavor of each ingredient to shine and not be overpowered by any other one. So pungent garlic is a problem. You don't want to use too much, and you don't want the garlic to burn and become bitter. It'll just ruin the flavor of your dish. So I'm going to use a traditional Italian technique of incorporating the garlic, which I'll show you now. I'm going to start with a pot on a medium flame, and I'm going to add a good amount of olive oil to the pot. I know it seems like a lot of oil, but we want that richness in our sauce that we're lacking without the meat, and a good olive oil and some fat in there really helps that richness. Once the oil is heated but not smoking hot, you want to add your garlic, and I crush these just slightly so that they don't fall apart. They're in pretty big chunks. You want to let this gently simmer in the oil. The idea is to infuse the garlic flavor into the oil. You want to stir this around just until you start to see some golden brown edges on the garlic, and then remove it from the pan. Watch this carefully. There's a really fine line between slightly golden garlic and burned garlic, and you don't want to cross that line at all. Now what we have is a base of oil that is perfumed with sweet garlic, but not overwhelming. It's just a hint and just enough to enhance all the other flavors of the pasta dish. Now we're adding the sofrito, the celery, the carrots, and the onions, and I'm going to season it with a little salt and pepper, and I'm gonna cook this down in the oil until it's just softened and translucent. Once the vegetables have become softened, add 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. You wanna fry the tomato paste in the oil. This is another layer of deep, rich umami flavor that you're developing in the dish. You wanna just cook this for a couple of minutes, and when you can smell the rich aromas of the fried tomato paste wafting out of the pan, add 1 cup of a good white wine. If you don't cook with alcohol, that's okay. You can use a good vegetable broth or even some water. I like wine because it does add a little bit of the acidity to the sauce and a layer of flavor to the sauce that it's lacking without, but it's perfectly good without the wine as well. Cook this down for a few minutes until the wine is reduced and the alcohol is mostly cooked off, and then add your mushrooms. You want to cook these until they release their water and soften and start to cook down. That's about 5 minutes. Finally, you want to add 2 cups of tomato sauce. I'm using a homemade one that I can, but you can use a canned tomato sauce or an Italian passata sauce. Just make sure you're using as pure of a tomato sauce as possible, not a prepared like spaghetti sauce or pasta sauce that you would find in the grocery store. Now is the time for patience. You want to let this sauce simmer and reduce on low heat for at least 2 hours, going in and stirring every now and then to make sure it's not sticking to the bottom or burning. I actually started the sauce cooking before I made my pasta so that I could do that while the sauce was simmering. If the sauce gets too thick along the way or dry, you can always add a little bit of water to keep it going along. But you want this to reduce down into a thick ragu, and that slow, long cooking helps develop all those flavors and makes it all integrate into a nice, rich, hearty sauce. All right, now when you have the sauce and the pasta all ready to go, you want to heat a large pot of water to boiling and add a generous amount of salt. The rule of thumb is that you want your pasta water to be as salty as the sea. Drop in your fresh tagliatelle and give it a stir so it doesn't stick together. Since this is a fresh pasta, it's going to cook really quickly and be done in only 3 or 4 minutes. To test for doneness, you want to take a piece out and take a bite of it to see how al dente it is. You still want it to have a little bit of bite in the middle and not be soggy at all. When the pasta is ready, you want to take that pasta out of the boiling water and put it directly into a pan where you have some of your sauce in it. I didn't add all the sauce into the pan at once because I made more than I'm going to need, and I don't want this to be over sauced. So I'm just starting with a few spoonfuls of sauce in the bottom. If I need more sauce, I can add it, but it's hard to take away sauce if you've overdressed it. So you gently stir the pasta and mix it with the sauce, and then it's time to plate it up. I like to use just another spoonful of sauce right on top of the pasta after I plated it.
Okay, how does it look?
It's beautiful, but what is it? Ragout?
Ragout. No, it's a mushroom ragu.
Oh, ragu. Ragu.
Ragout.
Is ragu a thing?
Ragu is a thing.
Let me taste
Take a
it.
taste with homemade pasta.
Stay
Tagliatelle.
Stay on my fork, please. Ah. Oh my.
Rich.
Delicious.
Umami-ish.
Pasta's awesome. Umami-ish, that's a good word. Yum.
It's a big plate of pasta. It's gonna be so good.
I'm not gonna eat this whole thing, just so anybody knows.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
No.
I think you are.
No.
I think you are.
I'm saving it.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked what you saw. If you did, please make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss out on any more great plant-based recipes. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.